I can't do this. Like what is happening to me? Why is everything breaking down? Hello, welcome to my channel. My name is Leah, and if you saw by the title of this video, I have a lot of different chronic illnesses. And I wanted to share the story today of my different chronic illnesses and when I was diagnosed. I've never shared this story in full before because there's so much to it, and I feel like my health is forever changing. I feel like as soon as I put out a video about what's going on with me, I'm gonna have to update it in a couple of days. That's how it feels sometimes. Okay, so first off, I have always been a pretty healthy kid, but I always struggled with anxiety, always. I pretty much feel like I was just born with it. I've always been anxious. I started getting panic attacks by the time that I was about 12, went into therapy, eventually had to start medications, and I feel like I have a pretty good control on that now, but that really plays into kind of how my whole story started. In 2018, I had gotten a new job. In the time that I worked at that job, I had gotten sick quite a few times. Just mostly I was having heart palpitations. I was having kind of like I got a cold. I just felt like I was sick all the time during that time frame of like 3 or 4 months. And this was kind of going into the end of 2018 and into the beginning of 2019. I didn't know why I was sick, but what really was bothering me was these heart palpitations that I was having, and I was also having like some back and chest pain. But I was so used to being anxious, I really did think that I was just having a panic attack. I thought like, oh, this is just anxiety, it's probably nothing, it'll go away, like give it a little bit of time. It didn't go away. Actually, it started to get worse. It went from these little periods that I would get every couple of weeks or whatever. I would get like a period of my heart feeling really fast and like just beating out of my chest. Started turning into a weekly occurrence, and then it was every couple of days. And then before I knew it, it was literally like that all the time. I started to realize that maybe it wasn't anxiety, because even when I was really calm, I was still having these episodes. I didn't know what was going on. There was one specific incident where my husband and I went to the gym, and I ran 5 minutes on the treadmill. But just that 5 minutes on the treadmill, my heart rate was like 190. And I remember getting off the treadmill, I started blacking out, I started hearing ringing in my noises. I like went to the ground immediately, and I laid there and I was just waiting for my heart to recover. And it never did. It didn't recover. I remember Googling how long does it take for your heart rate to recover. That night, we ended up going to the emergency room. My husband took me to the emergency room, and after I showered, because I was like, I'm sweaty, I'm gross. I know I should not have showered, but I did. And I got admitted that night, and initially they thought that maybe I was having supraventricular tachycardia, also known as SVT. But my heart was in sinus rhythm. It was very fast, very, very fast, but it was in sinus rhythm. So they said, well, you're not having a heart attack, but we can't send you home if your heart rate is this high. Like it's not safe to send you home. They started me on beta blockers. I had an echocardiogram, EKGs. I saw cardiologists. After I had the beta blocker, it kind of slowed down a bit, so they cleared me to go home. But this started happening. These scary events started happening more and more, and I was in the emergency room all the time. And long story short, eventually I was able to find a cardiologist who suggested that I may have POTS syndrome. Now, POTS syndrome stands for postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, and it's actually not a cardiac issue. It does affect your heart, but it's an autonomic issue. So this was kind of the beginning of everything. He said, maybe this is what you have, like you're doing good on the beta blockers, but I was still having trouble walking, and at that point I was using mobility aids. So I had like a wheelchair that I was using and a walker, and he was like, this is above my expertise, and you really need to see a neurologist that specializes in autonomic therapy. So all this kind of happened in 2019, and then COVID hit, so I wasn't able to see the specialist until 2020. But that was the first thing that happened. And then as I was dealing with this and I was waiting to see the neurologist, the autonomic specialist, I started to have a really painful stomach. Like when I ate certain things, or sometimes I would even eat the same thing that I always ate, but my stomach would hurt so bad. I didn't know if like my appendix was rupturing. I didn't know what was going on, but it was very physical pain, and it was kind of on the right side. We went to the emergency room again. They did some imaging, and it came back that I had colitis. From what I understand, not a doctor, I just had really inflamed intestines. And then it kind of got to the point where I started throwing up. It was terrible. And then eventually it got to the point where my stomach would physically look like I was pregnant. Like I would look like I was 6 months pregnant. I'll put a picture in right here. And it would happen where it would extend like this really big, and then the next morning it would be like normal. Sometimes it would even get big for a couple of days, and then it would end up normal again. And I was like, what is going on with me? Like, this can't be related to my heart thing, right? Like, this has to be, I don't know what was going on. So that all started, and then I got in finally to see the autonomic specialist in July of 2022. So this was actually at Stanford. I went to see a doctor at Stanford. They ran a bunch of tests, and it turns out that I had a lot of autonomic neuropathy in my abdomen, which I didn't even know. I thought that was just like a hands and feet thing, but apparently it's not. And he confirmed my POTS diagnosis, inappropriate sinus tachycardia diagnosis. He kind of told me about a lot of things that could be associated with it, and they were kind of all intertwined. So I felt like, okay, so now I have dysautonomia. That was the diagnosis I was given, and so that makes sense with the stomach issue. Then I feel like it was never ending, because after that happened, I started to get really tired, like really tired. If I couldn't sleep, I kind of acted like a 3-year-old. I would throw a temper tantrum because I was so tired. And I feel like nobody understands that level of tired. It's like a need to sleep. I got referred to see a sleep specialist, and I was told that I had idiopathic hypersomnia, which is a really fancy way of saying we don't know why you sleep so much, but you do. And it's probably related to everything else that's going on with your body. So I finally got in at this point to see a gastroenterologist who did some testing, found out I had small intestine bacteria overgrowth, which was what was causing all of the like distension in my stomach and the uncomfortable bloating that made me feel like I was pregnant. It was all caused by the small intestine bacteria overgrowth. That's one of those journeys that is like forever continuing, because I still have a lot of testing that I need to do with that. But before I could even get done with the gastroenterologist, yet another thing popped up, and this one is by far the worst. December of 2020, I just started a new medication for my gastric problems that I was having, and the medication was called Integrity. And I took it for maybe 2 weeks, but during this time, I was not myself. I was waking up in the middle of the night, and I was drenched in sweat, and my bed would be drenched in sweat. I'd have to change clothes. I would be starving, ravenous, to the point where I would eat so much that I would almost make myself sick because I just felt so hungry. I was getting confused. I noticed I had a really bad brain fog. We would go places and I would get lost, and I didn't know what was going on. And so I just went to my regular doctor, and I told her, I don't know what's going on. It's probably related to everything else that I've already been going through at this point. It's probably just another one of those things, you know. Probably not gonna be able to find an answer for it. I don't know. I was kind of bitter at this point because I had been going to so many doctors and getting so little answers as to what was happening. My doctor gave me a glucose kit, like a finger prick glucose meter, and she was like, check your glucose when you feel like this. She said if it's anything under, 70, that's really not what we want. Anything under 70 is bad. Anything under 60 is worse. It's pretty dangerous at that point. I went home, had another one of those episodes, checked my finger, and it read 48. So I was like, okay, that's really not good. And I Googled it, and of course I scared myself by Googling what 48 means. And pretty much it just means you need to get sugar in your body now. I started having those episodes pretty much all the time. And I stopped the Integrity medication that I had started because I thought maybe that was causing the episodes of the blood sugar. But then even after I stopped the Motegrity, it still kept happening. I was getting really scared because, you know, the POTS in the heart problem and the stomach problem, those aren't really dangerous. They're uncomfortable and they're annoying, but they're really not dangerous. But this is dangerous. I can't do this. Like what is happening to me? Why is everything breaking down? And I saw an endocrinologist and she was telling me that it could be linked to the dysautonomia. It could be, you know, this, it could be that. But after seeing 3 endocrinologists, none of them really knew what was going on. So finally I saw an endocrinologist in Stanford. And if you don't know what an endocrinologist is, it's just the specialist that deals with hormones and diabetes and things like that. She ran some tests and she was like, you really need to have what's called a 72-hour fast. And it's a test where you go 3 days without eating and you're in a hospital situation and they let your sugars drop very, very low. And then they take blood to see kind of what's going on in your body. So I did it. It was the worst experience of my life. It was the hardest thing I have ever had to go through, because it's not just 3 days of not eating. Like, the not eating is the easiest part of the entire process. The hardest part is that they're checking your blood sugars from your finger pricks all the time, but then they're coming in and they're drawing blood. I think the first 72-hour fast I had 70 vials, that's 70 vials of blood drawn in that 3 days. I was dehydrated and I couldn't eat and I couldn't sleep because they were coming in all the time, and it was terrible. And then the results came back and they were inconclusive. And she told me, we don't really know what's wrong. It might be a genetics thing. It might be diabetes. A year later rolls around. Now we're in 2022. It was a little over a month ago. I was told, you're gonna have to do the 72-hour fast again because some of the medications that you were taking were directly interfering with the results of the fast. So we want you to do it again. I cried. I did not want to do it again. It was the worst thing that I had ever done the first time. And I tried to be positive and be like, oh, maybe it won't be as bad as like the first time, right? No, it was just as bad. Actually, it might have been worse. Now I had to be off of my cardiac medications, the medications that kept my heart rate down. So not only was my heart rate fast because I have POTS, but it was also faster because I had a panic attack during my hospitalization. I could not control my anxiety. My blood sugars were low and I felt like junk. I hadn't eaten in 3 days. It was bad. But I got results back about 2 weeks ago where I have 4 out of 5 biological markers for an insulinoma. It doesn't stop, y'all. It doesn't stop. An insulinoma is a tumor on your pancreas that produces excess insulin and makes your blood sugar lower. So that is what they're thinking is causing all the low blood sugars. Is that tied in with the dysautonomia? I don't know. My next step is to get a PET scan and find out if they can operate on it. We'll find it first, because now I have the biological markers, meaning all the markers in my blood show that there should be one there. So now they have to do a PET scan and find the tumor. Once they find the tumor, they have to assess whether it's operable or not. They also might test it to see if it's cancerous or not, which is likely not. Those tumors are actually really good tumors to get because they're generally not cancerous. They don't spread. It's benign. But it's just one more thing that I have to think about and worry about, and I try really hard not to because it just puts too much stress and too much pressure on myself to just think about these things all the time. But it affects my life greatly. Emotionally, yes, but also physically, because I'm eating all the time, trying to keep my sugars up. I'm watching my sugars constantly, and I'm watching my heart rate constantly. But I know that I'm very fortunate because I have a really good support system, and I have people that love me and that watch videos about what I'm going through and what I have to deal with, and they try and figure out how they can help me. My parents and my husband have been the biggest supporters in my life. I also have amazing friends that, you know, when they know what's going on, they stop in, they ask about me. So I'm really fortunate because I know that my health is my biggest problem right now. I could have way worse challenges, you know? Now I'm just waiting. It's the waiting game. I have to see, you know, is this insulinoma, is it operable? Is it gonna be, are they gonna be able to find it? I still have a lot, you know, and I really want to share that. I have noticed that there's like no information out there about insulinomas unless you're a ferret. Apparently ferrets get insulinomas like really commonly, and sometimes dogs. In people it's extremely rare. So when I'm looking for information, there's not really a whole lot out there, especially not in the YouTube community. I haven't found anything personally. If you know of someone that's talking about their insulinoma journey, please let me know, because I would love to look at somebody else's journey and videos. So I want to put this out there so that other people going through this can like watch the videos and they have someone to ask questions to. And it's also a way for me to cope, because I'm in a lot of unknowns here. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if I have cancer. I don't know if this is ever gonna go away. I don't know if it's gonna be a simple procedure or a hard one, or maybe it's not even an insulinoma. You know, diagnoses change all the time. So it's a resource to cope for myself too. So anyways, thank you for taking the time. That was a super long video. So thanks for taking the time to watch this and kind of get a feel for the start of my journey. And from here on out, I'm gonna be doing the best that I can to vlog whenever I have a doctor's appointment, whatever. I want to vlog all that in the future so that you can come along with me. And if you have any questions or helpful suggestions, leave them down below. And thanks for getting to know me.